Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to imagine this moment very clearly. The phone is on the table, no unread messages. No typing bubbles. No last scene you're obsessively checking. Silence used to feel like the enemy to you. It was the space where your anxiety exploded, where every worst-case scenario played out in your head, where you refreshed the chat, checked their last scene, reread old messages searching for the exact moment you messed everything up. But when both of you stop contacting, when you're not chasing and they're not breadcrumbing, silence stops being a weapon and starts becoming a mirror. It shows you the truth of the dynamic that you couldn't see clearly while you were fighting so hard to keep it alive. When there were constant messages, calls, fights, reconciliations, half promises and half effort, there was noise, emotional static. You were so busy reacting that you couldn't really observe. You were always explaining, apologizing, clarifying, chasing. They were always dodging, minimizing, delaying, pulling back. The whole thing felt intense and dramatic, so it must have felt like love. But intensity isn't intimacy. Chaos isn't chemistry. The constant movement distracted you from a painful reality. One person was doing the emotional heavy lifting, while the other person stayed safely on the sidelines. When the contact stops on both sides, that pattern falls to the ground. No one is reaching. No one is retreating. No one is sending a you okay, or a we need to talk. And suddenly, the roles you both played so automatically start to stand out in sharper contrast. You begin to see how much you over-functioned, how much you were always the one to close the gap, how often you swallowed your hurt to keep the peace, how you turned every withdrawal into a puzzle you needed to solve instead of a message you needed to hear. In the quiet, there is nowhere to hide from those truths. You can't distract yourself with drafting another text. You can't keep bargaining in your head about what you'll say to make it all better. Your nervous system is still twitching at first, wanting to leap back into the dance. But the longer you hold your boundary, the more you start to watch the story instead of just starring in it. You remember how many times you cried alone after pretending everything was okay. You remember begging for a real conversation and getting delayed, deflected, or dismissed. You remember the feeling in your body when they went cold and distant, and how you blamed yourself for that change instead of recognizing that it was their coping mechanism, not your failure. Silence shows you that what you thought was against the world was often just you against your own loneliness, using their occasional attention as proof you weren't crazy to keep fighting. It reveals just how imbalanced the emotional labor was. Who worried more? Who planned more? Who initiated more? Who noticed the shifts and tried to address them? When you're not tangled up in new drama, the answer is painfully clear: it was you. You were in survival mode, constantly trying to manage their moods, their fears, their space, while your own needs sat on the back burner, barely acknowledged. You also start to see how much of your identity got wrapped up in trying to regulate the relationship. You weren't just a partner. You were an emotional life support machine. You monitored every signal. You adjusted yourself based on their reactions. You watered a plant that rarely turned toward the sun. In silence, you realize how exhausted you are. Not just heartbroken, drained. There is a different kind of truth in that exhaustion. It says, this wasn't just love. This was overfunctioning. This was me doing the work of two people and calling it destiny. And what about them? Silence exposes their side too. Even if you can't see it directly, they no longer have the safety of your constant effort to prop up the illusion that they tried. Without your anxiety to blame, their avoidance is naked. They didn't reach out. They didn't fight to fix it. They didn't show up. That doesn't mean they feel nothing. It means you can finally see their actual capacity, not their potential, not the version of them you built in your head based on rare good days and pretty words. Silence reveals that when love required consistency, they chose comfort. When love required vulnerability, they chose distance. When love required effort, they chose escape. That realization is brutal, but it is also liberating. Because once the noise is gone, you can no longer hide behind, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm dramatic, maybe I'm the problem. You see what you brought to the table: loyalty, sensitivity, presence, effort. and you see what they actually brought back. Not what they promised, not what you hoped for, but what they repeatedly showed you in action. The imbalance stops being a theory and becomes undeniable reality. Silence doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't romanticize. It just sits there reflecting back the truth: you were surviving, not thriving, over giving, not receiving, performing, not resting. It shows you that a relationship where one person is constantly proving their love and the other is constantly protecting their distance is not a love story. It's an emotional survival story. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. That's the shocking part. Not that they didn't text, but that deep down, you finally understand why you shouldn't be the one to break the silence anymore. In the beginning, the silence feels like it's burning you from the inside. Your nervous system has been trained to believe that your safety is on the other side of their reply, their call, their reassurance. For so long, when anxiety rose in your chest, you soothed it by reaching out. You sent the text, made the call, checked the social media, replayed their last words, anything to feel like you weren't losing them. Contact became your medicine, even when it also hurt you. So when you suddenly stop chasing, and they don't reach back either, your entire body reacts as if you've been dropped into danger. You feel the urge to break the silence like an itch under your skin. Your heart races, your thoughts speed up, and your hands almost move on their own toward your phone. Every part of you screams, do something. Fix this. Reach for them before it's too late. This is not weakness. This is survival wiring. At some point in your past, maybe in childhood, maybe in a previous relationship, you learned that when connection feels threatened, you have to work overtime to keep it. That love is something you hold on to with both hands. That someone pulling away means you must pull harder. Your nervous system equated no response with you're about to be abandoned. It doesn't distinguish between emotional distance and physical danger. It just knows that loss hurts, and it wants to stop that pain any way it can. So when you and the avoidant both stop contacting, it feels like you're standing on a cliff edge with no railing. The instinct is to run backwards to what you know, even if what you know has been destroying you. But this is where something powerful begins to happen. You feel the wave of panic rise, and this time, you don't obey it. You watch your thoughts spin, your chest tighten, your mind create 100 terrifying stories. They don't care. They've moved on. You were never important. You want to smash the silence with a message just to make the anxiety go down a little. Instead, you pause. Maybe just for 5 minutes. Maybe just long enough to put the phone down and drink water. Maybe just long enough to cry instead of perform. It doesn't feel brave in that moment. It feels like you're barely holding on. But that tiny space between the urge and the action is where your nervous system starts to learn a new truth. I can feel this and not die. The first day you hold the boundary is agony. The second day is still hard. Your body is used to quick relief. Dopamine from a notification. Temporary calm from seeing their name pop up. Without that, the anxiety spikes, peaks, and then slowly, ever so slightly, it begins to drop. You wake up the next morning and realize you made it through a full day without reaching out. You were uncomfortable, triggered, restless, but you survived. That evidence is gold. Your body just learned, on a primal level, silence did not kill me. I am still here. It's not just a thought now, it's an experience. Over time, as you keep honoring the boundary, the waves start to change. They still come, but they don't own you the same way. You notice you can feel the urge to text and choose to take a walk instead. You can miss them and still choose not to break your own rule. You can hear the story in your head that says, if you don't act now, you'll lose them forever, and answer with, if I have to betray myself to keep them, I've already lost too much. Each time you do that, your nervous system is rewiring. You're teaching it that safety can come from self-respect, not just from connection at any cost. The detox from the roller coaster is messy. Your body goes through withdrawal from the constant highs and lows. You were addicted to the cycle: anxiety, contact, temporary relief, disappointment, repeat. That cycle gave you spikes of intensity that felt like proof of love. Without it, life feels flat at first, boring, too quiet. But slowly, you begin to notice something you haven't felt in a long time: steadiness. You sleep a little better. You're not as jumpy when your phone buzzes. You can go a few hours without obsessively checking if they've been online. Your mind, once hijacked by their every move, starts to have room again. Room for you, your thoughts, your desires, your life. The most shocking part is that the fear you thought would swallow you doesn't. Yes, it hurts. Yes, you miss them. Yes, there are nights you feel like you're breaking apart. But under the grief, there is this quiet, emerging strength. The realization that you can feel longing without acting on it. That you can love someone and not chase them. That you can be scared and still choose what's healthy for you. Your nervous system, one day at a time, is learning a new story. I am not safe because they respond. I am safe because I stay with myself no matter what they do. And one day, you look back at the version of you who believed that your only option in pain was to run toward them. You feel compassion, not shame, because now you know something they didn't. You can survive without chasing. You can breathe through the silence. You can hold your own hand through the storm. You are not a prisoner of the urge to reach out anymore. You're becoming the person who doesn't abandon themselves just to avoid feeling abandoned by someone else. For a long time, your effort was the perfect place for the avoidant to hide. As long as you were texting first, calling first, apologizing first, suggesting the plans, opening the hard conversations, they never had to fully face what they were doing or not doing. Your over-functioning covered their under-functioning. On the surface, it looked like a relationship. There were messages, calls, inside jokes, photos, memories. But if you look deeper, you'll see something uncomfortable and painfully clear. Most of the emotional work was coming from you. Your effort was the curtain, and behind that curtain, their avoidance stayed safe, unchallenged, and largely invisible. Think about all the times they pulled away and you filled the gap. They went cold, and you warmed the room with reassurance. They went silent, and you broke the silence with a long, thoughtful message. They said, "I don't know what I want," and instead of taking that as an answer, you turned it into a problem for you to solve. You analyzed, you adapted, you softened your needs, you shrank your truth, all to make it easier for them to feel comfortable. Your love was not just affection. It became a shield that blocked them from having to confront their own emotional limitations. Your effort also gave them a story they could hide behind. Any discomfort they felt, they could pin on your neediness, your overthinking, your intensity. They didn't have to say, "I'm avoiding my feelings," because they could say, "You just want too much from me." They didn't have to admit, "I am scared of intimacy," because they could insist, "You are the one creating drama." Your constant reaching, questioning, caring made it easy for them to frame the whole situation as, "I'm fine, you're the problem." But that illusion only works when you're actively performing the role of the anxious pursuer. When both of you stop contacting, that entire hiding place collapses. There is no new text from you to blame their anxiety on. There is no emotional essay from you to roll their eyes at. There is no long call from you they can use as evidence that you're too much. There is just nothing. And in that nothing, their behavior becomes impossible to deny. They didn't follow up. They didn't initiate. They didn't step in to repair what was broken. Your absence doesn't just hurt, it reveals. It reveals that when connection depended on their effort instead of yours, there was almost none. That realization may not hit them all at once. Avoidants are skilled at distraction. Work, entertainment, new people, anything that keeps them from sitting too long with their own feelings. But life has a way of stripping away distractions when the noise dies down. It's when the day ends, the room is quiet, and the phone is face down on the nightstand, that their mind wanders back to the moments they chose distance over honesty. They remember the times you cried and they shut down. They remember you asking, "Can we please talk about this?" and them changing the subject. They remember your effort, and the contrast between your effort and their avoidance becomes hard to ignore. Without your constant attempts to fix things, they are confronted with a version of the story where they have to ask themselves, "What did I actually do to make this work?" Not what they intended, Not what they hoped someday to be capable of, but what they actually showed up with. That gap between intention and action is brutal. It exposes that they weren't just unlucky in love or cursed with needy partners. They were active participants in their own heartbreak by choosing safety over depth again and again. Your effort used to soften that truth. Now the truth stands alone. At the same time, your lack of effort forces them to feel the impact of their choices. Before, if they pulled away and felt lonely, they could always count on some emotional signal from you, a check in, a meme, a memory, something that reminded them, I could have them back if I wanted. That thought was comforting. It allowed them to keep you in the background like an emotional safety net. Now, when they feel lonely, they don't get that instant reassurance from your side. The safety net is gone and the ground below is real. The loneliness is no longer something they can blame on your pressure. It is the natural outcome of them not investing in what they had. For you, recognizing this is painful but empowering. You begin to see that your effort was not only love, it was cover. It protected them from having to see themselves clearly. It allowed them to stay half in, half out without fully owning the consequences. When you pull your effort back, not with resentment, but with self-respect, you are not being cruel. You are simply putting the responsibility for their feelings and their patterns back where it belongs, in their hands, not yours. And whether they grow from it or not is no longer your job to manage. In the end, the avoidant losing their hiding place is less about their suffering and more about your clarity. You finally see who they are without the filter of your devotion. You see what they choose when they can't hide behind your effort. And from that clarity, you can make decisions that honor your heart instead of endlessly rescuing theirs. There is a very specific turning point in your healing that most people miss, because it doesn't arrive with fireworks or some dramatic movie scene. It happens in the smallest, quietest ways. For so long, almost every thought you had was about them. You woke up thinking about what they were feeling. You went to sleep wondering what they meant by that last message. Your emotions rose and fell based on their mood, their tone, their presence, their absence. Your mind was like a search engine with only one keyword: them. What are they doing? Why aren't they replying? Did I say something wrong? Are they over me? Are they talking to someone else? You weren't just in love with them. You were emotionally orbiting them, like a moon around a planet that refused to fully claim you. When both of you stop contacting, that obsessive energy doesn't disappear immediately. At first, it gets louder. Your mind tries to fix the silence by thinking harder about them. You replay every memory and every fight. You examine screenshots. You imagine what you should have said. You fantasize about them coming back. Your brain is so used to making them the center of every story that it doesn't know what else to do. This is the withdrawal phase. It's not just withdrawal from the person. It's withdrawal from the role you played. Caretaker, chaser, analyzer, emotional translator. The role gave you a sense of purpose, even while it drained you. But slowly, something starts to shift. One day, maybe just for a few minutes, you get tired of running the same mental movie. You catch yourself mid-obsession and feel an exhaustion so deep it almost makes you exhale out loud. There's a moment where you think, I can't keep doing this to myself. That tiny pause is the crack where light begins to enter. You're not healed yet, you still miss them. But your attention, even for a second, starts to turn away from the question, what are they doing? Toward the question, what am I doing to myself? You begin to realize how little space you've had for your own life. Ask yourself honestly, how many times did you ignore your hobbies, your goals, your friendships, because you were too busy managing the emotional weather of this relationship? How many times did you say no to yourself so you could be more available for them? Waiting for plans, waiting for texts, waiting for clarity. Your identity became the one who cares more. You were always on call, emotionally like a 24/7 support line. When the silence stretches, you start to see the cost of that. It hits you that while you were obsessing over whether they would choose you, you had quietly stopped choosing yourself. The shock is not that they didn't show up the way you hoped. The real shock is how far you drifted away from your own center. You notice that you don't know what you truly want anymore, outside of wanting them. You don't know what makes you feel alive that has nothing to do with them. And instead of using that realization to shame yourself, you can use it as a map back home. You start asking new questions, gentle but powerful ones. What did I love before all of this? What kind of friendships make me feel nourished? What routines make my body feel safe? What kind of life feels good to me, even if nobody else is there to witness it? Bit by bit, you experiment. You go for a walk without checking your phone obsessively. You listen to music you love, not the songs that remind you of them. You message a friend not to talk about your heartbreak, but just to connect. You pick up an old interest or try something new. At first, it feels weird, almost fake, like you're just distracting yourself. But underneath the fake is something very real. You are redirecting energy back into your own life. The same intensity you once used to scan their social media, analyze their words, and predict their moods, you begin to invest into understanding yourself. Your inner dialogue changes too. Instead of asking, why didn't they choose me? You start to ask, why did I keep choosing someone who couldn't show up for me? Instead of thinking, what if they move on? You shift toward, what do I want to move toward? You start to see that your worth was never in their hands, it was in your gaze. You gave them the power to define how lovable, desirable, and valuable you felt. When you pull that gaze back and turn it inward, you begin to see your own depth again. Your sensitivity, your loyalty, your courage to love as hard as you did. Those things don't make you weak, they make you rare. The obsession loosens its grip, not because you stop caring about them overnight, but because you begin sincerely caring about you. The more you connect with your own needs and desires, the less willing you become to obsess over someone who didn't protect them. That doesn't mean you turn cold or bitter. In fact, you often become softer with yourself. You speak to yourself with a little more kindness. You allow yourself to feel the grief without judging it. You start saying, I know this hurts, but I'm proud of you for not breaking your own heart again, just to avoid missing them. One day, you'll notice the shift clearly. You'll catch yourself in a moment where something good happens. A small win, a calm day, a genuine laugh. And your first thought won't be, I wish they were here, but I'm glad I'm here. That's the moment the center of your universe moves. Not from them to someone else, but from them back to you. The relationship may or may not get another chapter, but your relationship with yourself finally gets to be the main story. There is a script you've been acting out for so long that it started to feel like your personality. It goes like this: they pull away, you lean in. They go quiet, you get louder. They say, I don't know. You say, let me prove it. They stay on the fence. You build the entire relationship around their uncertainty. Every time they withdrew, your body panicked and your instinct was to move closer, talk more, fix more, love harder. You weren't weak. You were trying to keep something alive that meant everything to you. But that script cost you your power. It kept you locked in a role where you were always the one convincing, chasing, adjusting, and they were always the one deciding, withholding, retreating. When both of you stop contacting, that script suddenly has no stage. There is no chase. There is no withdrawal. There is just a pause. And in that pause, something profound happens. You start to see that the whole pattern only worked because you kept stepping into your old role every time they played theirs. They needed to pull away, and you needed to run after them. It was like a dance you both knew by heart. But now, the music has stopped, and you're standing there realizing that you don't have to keep performing the same choreography anymore. In the old script, your worth was always hanging in the balance. You lived in, if only land. If only they understood you, if only they healed, if only they can heal, if only they texted back, if only they saw how hard you love. Every moment was about winning them over, proving you were worth staying for. When they gave you crumbs of affection, you felt high. When they withdrew again, you crashed. Your emotional state was hooked to their behavior like a puppet on strings. Power in that setup was never really yours. It lived in their hands, in their replies, their moods, their willingness or unwillingness to show up. But in mutual silence, something shifts. They are no longer the one deciding when you get relief. You are. Because now the choice is not, will they come closer? But, will I keep abandoning myself? The old script says, they pulled away, so now it's your job to go get them. The new reality you're stepping into whispers, they pulled away, so now it's your job to stay with you. That is where power begins to return, not in controlling them, but in controlling whether you keep repeating a pattern that hurts you. You start to realize that if contact happens again, it will not be on the same terms. Before, any small effort from them felt like a blessing. A text after days of silence could send you into orbit. You trained yourself to accept the bare minimum because the fear of losing them was louder than your standards. Now, with distance and clarity, you begin to question that. Is a enough for someone who broke your heart with half love? Is an apology enough without change? Is a little warmth enough to make you forget the cold you endured? Power returning to you looks like being willing to say, no, not in anger or revenge, but in alignment. No, I won't go back to that version of us. No, I won't twist myself into someone easier to love. No, I won't lower my needs to fit your comfort level. And it also looks like being open to, yes, from a different place. Yes, I will listen if you come with honesty and consistency. Yes, I will consider reconciliation if there is real effort and repair. Yes, I will show up fully for someone who meets me there. The difference is that now you decide, instead of automatically taking whatever they offer because you're afraid of losing them. When the chase and withdraw script dies, the avoidant has a choice they have been able to postpone for a long time. Either they step forward from their own will, or they stay distant and lose access to you. You are no longer supplying the bridge. You're not sending the just checking on you text. You're not gifting them endless emotional safety while they offer you emotional uncertainty. If they want connection, they must do what they have avoided. Initiate, share, commit, feel. The very things that terrified them now become the only path back to you. That alone changes the power dynamic, because your availability is no longer guaranteed. It has to be earned. For you, this is where self-trust starts to bloom. You begin to trust that you don't have to cling to someone just because you love them. You trust that walking away from chaos is not the same as walking away from love. You trust that your boundaries are not walls built out of bitterness, but fences built out of wisdom. You trust that your feelings are valid guides, not annoying glitches to be ignored for the sake of keeping the peace. The old script kept you small, scared, and always one step behind, trying to catch up to their emotional distance. The new story allows you to stand still and let reality come to you. If they never return, you are still whole. If they return unchanged, you are still allowed to say no. If they return transformed, you can choose with clear eyes whether that transformation is real and whether it aligns with the life you're building now. In every scenario, the shocking, beautiful truth is the same. You are no longer powerless in your own story. The part no one warns you about is that after a while, the story stops being about them. At the beginning, everything in you is convinced that the main plot twist will be their reaction. Will they text? Will they regret it? Will they miss me? Will they realize what they lost? Your mind plays that reel on repeat, waiting for some dramatic comeback that proves the relationship meant something. But as time passes, something entirely different sneaks up on you, something far more important and far more shocking than whether or not they ever reappear. The real twist is that you start to change, quietly, deeply, radically. And one day, you realize you are no longer longing for the old version of yourself who lived off emotional crumbs. That older version of you was doing the best they could with what they believed. They believed love had to be fought for nonstop. They believed tolerance was the same as loyalty. They believed that if someone was wounded or distant, it was noble to carry both your pain and theirs. That part of you bent in every direction to keep the connection alive. They wrote the long messages, forgave repeated behavior, went to bed sick with anxiety and called it passion. They handed out chances like candy, hoping one day it would all be worth it. You might even miss that person sometimes, because they loved with a kind of reckless devotion that felt pure, even while it destroyed them. But there comes a point where exhaustion becomes a teacher. Your body can't keep living on high alert. Your heart can't keep carrying both sides. Your spirit can't keep shrinking so someone else doesn't feel threatened by your needs. So slowly, without a big announcement, you begin to shift. At first, it's tiny. You say no to a late-night text that used to pull you back in. You stop explaining yourself to someone who never truly listens. You feel the urge to chase, and instead of sprinting after them, you sit with yourself, uncomfortable but committed. Those micro choices are the bricks of a new identity being built under your feet. What will shock you is how your definition of love begins to evolve. The old you thought love meant staying, no matter how badly it hurt. The emerging you starts to understand that real love includes you too. It includes your peace, your sleep, your mental health, your joy. Love stops being measured by how much pain you can endure for someone else and starts being measured by how safe and honest you feel in their presence. That shift is subtle at first, but then it reshapes everything. You no longer melt just because someone says, "I miss you." You listen for consistency. You watch for actions. You care less about the drama of the moment and more about the pattern over time. There will still be nights when you cry. There will still be days when a memory knocks the wind out of you. Healing doesn't erase your heart. It just stops letting it run the whole show. Little by little, you notice that your inner questions are changing. Instead of asking, "Will they come back?" you start asking, "Do I even want to go back to who I was with them?" Instead of, "Did I lose my only chance at love?" you start hearing, "What kind of love do I want to create from here?" These new questions are signs that your loyalty is shifting from them to you. One day, maybe long before you realize it, you will be offered something familiar again. It might even be them, a breadcrumb, a half-effort, a stranger message, a warm week followed by cold distance. The old version of you would have jumped at it, heart first, logic last. But this time, something in you pauses. You don't rush to reply. You don't build a fairy tale out of 3 kind sentences. You feel your body, you remember the sleepless nights, you remember the ache of constantly questioning your own worth, and from somewhere deep inside, a calm voice says, "Not like this. Not anymore." That moment will shock you more than any message they could ever send. Because it's the proof that your nervous system, your heart, your mind, have all learned something new. You are no longer that person who will trade your peace for a chance at someone's potential. You might still care about them. You might even always care, but you care about you more. You care about your boundaries, your dignity, your future. You care about building a life where love isn't a constant argument between your needs and their fears. Healthy love begins to look more appealing than intense love. Peaceful starts to feel better than unpredictable. Clarity feels safer than the thrill of never knowing where you stand. You start to see your own energy as sacred. You notice how wise, intuitive, and strong you actually are. The same qualities you once used to keep a broken dynamic alive, you now use to build something stable and beautiful with yourself, and eventually, with someone who can match you. And this is the real surprise. You stop wishing to go back in time and fix it. You don't fantasize about saying the perfect thing that would have made them stay. You don't want to rewind to the version of you that would have accepted the bare minimum just to avoid being alone. Instead, you feel a strange, powerful gratitude for the fact that you made it through. You look at the new boundaries you've grown, the standards you've raised, the softness you've preserved, and you realize the most important relationship you were ever meant to repair was the one you have with yourself. Their reaction may never live up to the story your heart wrote, but your transformation will. That's the part that will truly shock you. Not that they changed, not that they stayed the same, but that you became someone who will never again beg to be chosen by anyone who can't even choose themselves.